It was one of those days where life seemed to be moving a little too fast. I was rushing through the city, trying to catch up with work, deadlines, and a never-ending to-do list. My head was filled with stress, and I was barely paying attention to the people around me. The streets were filled with people heading in all directions, some lost in their phones, some rushing to school or work, and others just trying to survive another day. I stopped near a park for a quick break, just to take a breath and reset my mind. That's when I noticed something that immediately pulled me out of my own world. On a bench not too far away, a little boy, maybe around 10 years old, was sitting with his backpack. He had just come from school. He opened his lunchbox, carefully unwrapping a sandwich, a little packet of chips, and a small juice box. It was nothing extraordinary, just a simple lunch that his mom had probably packed for him that morning. But then, something unusual caught my attention. Sitting a few steps away from him was a man I hadn't noticed at first. His clothes were worn out, his shoes almost falling apart, and his face carried the tiredness of someone who had seen too many hard days. He looked hungry. You could see it in his eyes as he quietly watched the boy open his lunch. But he didn't ask for anything. He didn't beg. He just sat there, staring at the ground, trying to keep to himself. I thought to myself, the boy is just going to eat, and maybe the man will walk away. But what happened next absolutely stunned me. The child looked at his sandwich, then glanced at the man, then back at his sandwich again. He hesitated for a second, and I could almost see the thoughts running through his little head. Without saying a word, he closed his lunchbox, walked over to the stranger, and held it out with both hands. At first, the man looked confused. He shook his head, as if to say no. But the boy insisted. He gently pushed the lunchbox toward him and said, "Please, you can have mine. I'm not that hungry." I froze in place. My chest tightened as I watched this tiny human do something that most adults would think twice about. The man's eyes filled with tears. He slowly took the lunchbox, holding it as if it were the most precious gift he had ever received. His hands trembled as he whispered, "Thank you." The boy just smiled and sat back down on the bench, swinging his legs as if what he had just done was nothing special. But to me, and to that man, it was everything. The man carefully opened the lunchbox, took a bite of the sandwich, and I saw tears silently roll down his cheeks. He ate slowly, almost savoring every single bite. Meanwhile, the boy pulled out a small apple from his backpack, probably a snack his mom had packed, and began eating that instead. As I sat there, I couldn't help but feel a wave of emotions. I thought about how often we walk past people in need. We make excuses. I don't have enough myself, or someone else will help. Or, they probably don't deserve it. Yet this boy, with his innocence and pure heart, gave away his entire lunch without expecting anything in return. I couldn't resist. I walked over to the boy and asked him, "Why did you give your food away?" He looked up at me with the most genuine eyes and said, "My mom always tells me that if you see someone who's hungrier than you should share. I still have my apple." But maybe he didn't have anything at all. His words hit me like lightning. I was speechless. Here was a child living out values that many of us forget as we grow older. He didn't overthink it, he didn't calculate whether he'd still have enough, he didn't judge the man for his appearance. He just saw hunger, and he responded with kindness. The stranger, still holding the half-eaten sandwich, looked at the boy and said softly, "I haven't eaten since yesterday. You don't know what this means to me." The boy smiled and replied, "That's okay. My mom says food tastes better when you share it." And in that moment, I realized I was witnessing something so pure, so powerful, that it would stay with me forever. I sat on the bench beside them, quietly watching the man finish his meal. He seemed lighter, as if not just his stomach but his soul had been fed. The boy, meanwhile, happily munched on his apple, completely unaware of how deeply his small act had touched both me and the stranger. As time passed, the man stood up, thanked the boy again, and walked away slowly, holding his head a little higher than before. It was as if the kindness he received gave him strength to keep going, even just for another day. I turned back to the boy and said, "You know, what you did was very special." He just shrugged and replied, "It wasn't special. It was just the right thing to do." That line has stayed in my heart ever since. After that day, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had witnessed. It made me reflect deeply on my own life. How often do we hold back kindness because we think it's too small, too insignificant, or maybe even inconvenient? But what if that tiny act was exactly what someone needed to survive, to hope again, or to feel seen? The boy didn't just give away his lunch. He gave away a piece of his heart. He gave dignity to someone who probably felt invisible. He reminded me that sometimes the most powerful lessons in life don't come from books, or speeches, or big dramatic events, they come from the simple, genuine actions of a child. Days later, I went back to that same park. I didn't see the boy or the man again. But the memory stayed with me, urging me to live differently. So I decided to start carrying an extra snack or bottle of water in my bag, just in case I came across someone who might need it. It wasn't much, but it was something. And every time I gave one away, I thought of that little boy and how his small act of kindness inspired me to do more. Kindness doesn't need to be grand. It doesn't need to be planned or perfect. It just needs to be real. That child proved that to me. Even now, when life gets overwhelming, I remind myself of his words, it wasn't special. It was just the right thing to do. And maybe that's the secret. If we all just chose to do the right thing, no matter how small, the world would be a very different place. So the next time you see someone struggling, remember the boy with the lunchbox. Remember that you don't have to fix their whole life. Sometimes all it takes is a sandwich, an apple, a kind word, or even just a smile to make a difference. That little boy didn't just feed a hungry man that day. He fed my soul. And I hope his story feeds yours too. Because kindness, no matter how small, is never wasted. And that's why, when a kid gave his lunch to a stranger, I was truly shocked. Not because I didn't think people could be kind, but because he reminded me that kindness is often found where we least expect it. So let us carry that lesson forward, and never underestimate the power of a small act done with a big heart.